So I think all the teams here are pushing everything to the absolute limit and trying to understand these new regulations. Obviously the team that's done the best job with that is Brawn GP, and Jensen is on a real high, pole position once again.
And talking of the new regulations, boy oh boy, they've closed up the pack, Eddie. At one point, after 5.5 kilometres racing around this track, there was just 4/1000th of a second between first and second, Button and Trulli.
Well, you have 5.5 kilometres, as you rightly say, and this works out at about the size of a match, the width of a match. It's impossible. You can't say this would be a dead heat in everything except the scientific timing that they've got in Formula 1. 2/1000ths of a second. It's ridiculous, really, given that so many different things, but the cars, the engines, the tyres, the drivers, everything combining together to be that close. And this is the sign. The new regulations seem to be working. Everybody's happy with them.
Yeah, remarkable. I don't know the last time we've seen such close racing and qualifying between the teams, and I think that looking forward to the race conditions that we're going to have tomorrow with that sort of qualifying. Obviously tonight we'll know what the fuel levels are, so we'll be able to fully understand the true pace of these cars, but I think we're going to see a great Grand Prix.
OK, well, of course, the true pace of the McLaren is still in doubt. Once again, Lewis Hamilton for the second racing session didn't manage to make it through to Q3. We can hear from him now.
Lewis, it's amazing how the norm changes. Is 13th where you thought that you might be?
Yeah, it was to be expected. Nothing's changed since the last race, so we knew that that's around the place we would be.
How tough were things out there on the track?
As tough as ever. We just, you know, the car doesn't feel terrible. It just feels, just don't have this, not able to carry the speed through the corners.
Any positives at all from today?
For sure. I mean, you can look forward. We're not dead last. I have no gearbox problem, so we can move forward.
OK, Lewis there looking on the positive side of things. He qualified just in front of his teammate Heikki Kovalainen. Here are his thoughts on qualifying. Unfortunately, we can't bring you that just at the moment. Heikki's obviously off discussing how he can move himself further up the grid. But let's have a quick mention of Lewis Hamilton. Lee Arson there, any positives at all to take from this? And some drivers, after what he's been through, probably would walk away at that question.
He's got to look on the bright side. As he quite rightly said, he's not on the back of the grid like he experienced in Melbourne. You never know what can play out in this race. We had safety cars in Melbourne, but we can have the weather play its part. He's got no choice. That's the car, that's the card he's been dealt, and he has to play it.
I think the best place for him right now is in that cockpit of the car. It's he's away from all of the noise, all of the media speculation, the discussions, and all the negativities that are going on around. He is so happy to be in that car. I don't care whether it's that slow or whether he's 13th on the grid. He wouldn't give a monkeys if he was 28th on the grid. The facts are that he wants to get away. He wants this race to be over with. He'd like to get some points, but I cannot see that his mind is totally and absolutely focused. If it is, I am staggered, because I'm not sure many humans could be.
Is it possible to drive a car at the speeds that these guys do, or that you have done, and still think about outside influences?
Yeah, you do think about other things when you're in the car. When you're really in the zone, then quite as you would expect, it just feels great. You feel you can place the car wherever you want and it'll go to that point on the circuit. This sort of thing in the back of his mind is going to be a distraction. And you know, these long straights, the drivers do reflect on other things. It might be the strategy, it might be the steward's inquiry, it might be the press conference that he endured. You know, those are life-altering experiences. OK, well, I do believe that we've managed to track down the elusive Finn. Here are the thoughts of Heikki Kovalainen.
Heikki, times are pretty tight out there, but you still must be disappointed you're out in Q2.
Yeah, of course, but you know, it was pretty much what we expected. We knew that it's going to be very tough to get into top 10. We tried our maximum. I think the fact is that we just don't have enough performance at the moment to get there. Otherwise, I think car is working fine. The team's done a great job again. We've improved little by little, but it's still not enough.
Has there been any distraction in the lead up to qualifying today for the team?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, a lot of things have been going on this weekend, but I think the team has really kept the focus very well. It hasn't distracted our job, you know, our business here. We've been working on the setup. We've been working through the practice sessions and preparing to every session like we always do. So it hasn't made any difference to that, and I think it's a good effort from the team under difficult circumstances.
We'll hear from the top three qualifiers very shortly in the drivers' press conference, but we heard from Heikki there. Just explain what the mindset will be at McLaren this weekend, Eddie. Will they be thinking, OK, we've gone through a pretty rough few days, now we concentrate on the racing, or will they be thinking, boy, oh boy, I just want to get home?
Well, they can't just say, let's go home, because they're here, they're professionals, and please let's not forget that they are carrying the responsibility and the financial interests of all those major sponsors that they've got. So they've got to get themselves out of this. They've got to prepare a certain dialogue with those sponsors, because one of the first things that the team principal will have to do is to make sure that those sponsors are at ease, and they're not going to be looking at contracts or looking for get-out clauses or something, because that would be a disaster.
Well, and I think probably you've got this better experience than most. You can't chuck in the towel the first time that it seems it's going a bit difficult.
Well, a team principal has to make sure that this is the time, more than ever, that you put your arm around the team, the driver and everyone associated, and you say, look, we're in this together, we're going to get way out of this together. And that includes the sponsors, it includes all the suppliers and the team. It's a very difficult, daunting time. And in some respects, I'm really sorry for McLaren, but they have brought it upon themselves, and we've seen that not just this time but before as well.
And do you sense the arm round the shoulder has been offered?
It's difficult for Martin because, you know, he is, I'm not sure if he is a major shareholder in that company. Ron Dennis certainly is, and this is the first race that I can recall that Ron Dennis is not at. And maybe he chose a good one not to come to, but leaving that aside, this will be very difficult times for Martin Whittaker, and he has to dig deep. There are certain discussions around at the moment that it is possible that maybe the team did know about what was going on about these rules with the stewards, and we'll find out in due course.
And tough for Martin Whitmarsh as well.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I was going to correct Eddie there. It's not Martin Whittaker. I think that's probably an old friend of yours from the Ford days. But yeah, difficult times for Martin Whitmarsh, and never a comfortable situation for anyone to go through. But that is the you know, it's a difficult sport, and you're under the public glare, and you have to be absolutely down the line.
And we don't believe Ron's here. Tough for him watching at home if that's exactly what he is. Good morning, Ron Dennis. Right, now time to bring you the thoughts of the drivers in the press conference. Here they are. Well, Sebastian Vettel's 10-point penalty means that he goes further back the grid. So, DC, just talk us through the grid as it stands now after the maths.
Yeah, another great pole position there from Jenson Button. You can see line up alongside Trulli. Glock is obviously promoted up to third. Rosberg there fourth. Weber in the Red Bull. Whizzing by Kubica. Raikkonen in the first Ferrari. Kerr's car, obviously not happy with that position at all. Moving down, obviously looking at Hamilton there, unfortunately in... not a very good grid position at all, and then as we move to the back of the grid, what a disaster for Massa and Ferrari down in 16th place. As we round out the grid with Fisichella, Soto, and back to you, as I didn't actually see who the last person was on the grid, and I didn't have time to write it down in my notes, so do apologise. It's Buemi.
I think you did a very professional job, and it was Sebastian Buemi at the back there. But let's talk about the front of the grid. Another fantastic performance by Jenson Button.
Yeah, I mean, this absolutely endorses what he was saying, and that is that this probably means more to him than Melbourne. And I can relate to that, because this signifies, it actually puts down a marker. The imprimatur says that this is a ridiculously fast car, and a lot of the teams behind them are going to have to do a lot of late night work to make sure that they get up with the Brawn car. 2
poles in a row, David says this ain't no fluke.
Indeed, it's clearly got great pace. Jenson smiling away is like an advert for teeth whitening, isn't he? It's quite incredible to see how happy he is. But we must remember that the first few cars in the grid there, they're the diffuser cars, and we're going to find out after this Grand Prix whether that's something that's going to be allowed to continue or not.
Absolutely right. Well, let's hear from team owner Ross Brawn. Here are his thoughts on today's qualifying.
Well done, Ross. Another pole. How hard was the challenge from the Toyotas and everybody else, though, today?
Very tough. We've been running fuel for the last couple of days, but we didn't know where the opposition were. So really Q2 was the first time that we could make a judgment. And we've managed to save some tyres with Jenson by running him on the hard tyre for most of qualifying until the end. So he's in good shape for the race now. But it was tough, and particularly Jarno looked very quick.
Is that quite a brave call to run Jenson on the hard tyres in Q2?
Not particularly, no. No, I mean, he's looked very strong. Once we started, once we got the reference time in Q1, he looked very strong. So, we don't want to take any chances, but the fact that we've now got 2 new sets of tyres for the race is great.
So what are you expecting from the race? Who do you think is going to give you a hard time? Any of the Kerr's cars, Toyota, Trulli?
Well, there's no one with Kerr's around us at the start, which is a help. Because we were dreading that, because they certainly have a gain here. I think Jarno looks in reasonable shape if you look at his long runs. They look good. And the Red Bulls look strong. So I think it'll be a great race tomorrow.
Okay, we look forward to it. Thanks very much, Ross.
Let's have a quick mention about Rubens Barrichello's performance today. And David, he got bogged down slightly in one of his flying laps. Just talk us through what you can see here.
He won't be happy, but with the gearbox penalty he has, he'll be lining up 9th on the grid.
How much of a frustration to have a Toyota like that in your way on one of your flying laps?
It's incredibly frustrating, and it's something that the drivers don't try and do deliberately, but inevitably you get sent out by your team, and you do the best you can to keep out of the way. And you know, this early in the season, he'll have marked that person's particular card, and he'll probably return the favour quietly at some other point in the season.
Well, let's see if he looks like a man who's just been scorned. We can now hear from Rubens Barrichello.
Rubens, is it bittersweet? You qualify 4th, but you've got to take the penalty.
No, because, you know, all in all, we had a fair and square qualifier right now, so I should have qualified on pole and then lost the 5 places. I think it would have been much better, but right now I have a car that is understeering. I don't know where that is coming from. That's a bit of a sad taste, because I couldn't solve that right now.
Well, Eddie, if they're that quick with a car that's understeering, how quick is this car going to be when they dial it into the circuit?
Well, they've got everything at the moment. They've got the confidence, they've got a win, 1-2 last week. We've moved on in superlatives talking about Brawn. Now we've got to find whether they can actually be real contenders for the World Championship. Button, if he was to win here tomorrow, he puts a huge mark down, and he makes it very difficult for people, particularly if they get away or if the ruling is in their favour with the FIA in Paris next week. So a lot will remain about that, and I think that will be their next battle that they've got to win, even probably more important than any battle they'll have on a track. They need to know that they're allowed to keep the diffuser as they currently have it, and I think Brawn probably are preparing all the documents to prove that they're right and their interpretation of the rules were correct.
You mentioned the diffuser there. It's worth pointing out that the top 4 cars on the grid for the start of this Grand Prix will all be cars with diffusers that have been called into question.
Yeah, is that a coincidence, or is it that it is giving a big performance gain? But certainly the other 7 teams that aren't running that type of diffuser would say that that is the reason why they're at the front. So, as Eddie points out, we'll find out next week in Paris what the outcome of that hearing is going to be. The FIA have already cleared it to go racing in Melbourne, so it's very difficult to imagine how that's going to change.
Is this just grease to the elbow of those teams that aren't happy about that diffuser, Eddie? Because if the cars were struggling at the back, suddenly they might not be too bothered about it.
Well, you know, it's a matter of, you know, people are saying, well, we don't have it, so why should they have it? You know, there's a bit of a dog in the manger attitude to this sort of thing, and Formula One is no exception to the rule. They're very easy to come out and criticise other people just because they didn't see it themselves first. Having said that, I agree, David is quite right. The FIA, it's going to take some convincing for them to change their view on this, because they're not in the habit of overruling the stewards, because these stewards are very well-positioned intellectual people who have either judges or barristers in their own right, and they have made a decision based on the information that was presented to them. They have declared it correct. How are they going to now turn around and say it's not correct? My guess is that David is right. I think that they will be granted permission to use this current diffuser that is currently run, and the other teams will have to find a system that comes up to that level.
OK, I think we've probably discussed enough about decisions behind closed doors this weekend. Of course, this isn't really all about the racing. And Eddie's already mentioned that 2 pole positions in a row means an awful lot for Jenson Button. Let's take a look at his pole lap now.
A good lap, and I'm sure he was absolutely delighted.
Other than dealing with the heat, I'm sure it felt pretty good taking the car around there. When he's in a good car, how good is Jenson Button? He's certainly good to watch.
Yeah, he's a very smooth driver. You know, he's like an artist when he's just playing with the steering wheel there. Quite similar, actually, in many respects to Rubens, and Eddie's touched on the times that Eddie was his team principal at Jordan. So 2 drivers that are very smooth, very good with the positioning of the car.
OK, well, just about one driver that Eddie hasn't had under his command here in Formula One is Fernando Alonso, the double world champion. Finished last season on a high. Things haven't been going his way, though, so far. He qualified P9 today. We can hear from him.
Fernando, I know you've been feeling under the weather. How tough was that out there today?
Today I felt better straight away from the morning with no temperature, so I managed to be more or less in good conditions for qualifying, so no excuses from my side. I think you know, we didn't make or didn't deliver today as we expected, probably because we wanted to be in the top 5, top 7 this qualifying, and it was not possible for us. So unfortunately we need to improve, and we know from today's result that we are not in the good shape in this start of the championship. So hopefully we need to improve the car. We need to be quicker next time, and 10th is the result we deserve. So it's nothing to say about that.
Who's in better shape, you or the car?
I think the car. I think the car, but obviously we are both not in the shape we wanted.
Well, a clean-shaven Fernando Alonso there, qualifying in P9. He's probably not going to get performance of the day, possibly as much to do with the car as the driver, but let's discuss who does get your performance of the day from qualifying.
Well, difficult to take it away from Jensen, not just because he's in pole position, but he's making full use of the machinery below him. This is happy days. He could never have believed that 3 weeks ago before going to Melbourne.
And Eddie?
Well, obviously, Jensen is by far miles ahead of everybody else, but just if we were to take him out of the equation at this stage, you'd have to say Glock. I think Toyota, second and third on the grid. Glock has done an amazing job for a very young driver.
Shock horror, one of your former drivers. Would you believe it? Right, that's just about it for us. But just because we're disappearing, the Formula One doesn't. Do check out bbc.co.uk/sport for blogs. You can also watch tomorrow's race live online. There's also breaking news on there as well. And tomorrow, once the race gets underway, feel free to press the red button for a whole host of interactive options. There's rolling news on there. There's rolling stats. You can also alternate your commentary between us, between Radio 5 Live, and also between the CBBC commentary. So press red during tomorrow's Malaysian Grand Prix, which will be live here on BBC One with all the build-up from 9 o'clock in the morning. But if you're after horsepower of a different variety, the Grand National gets going today, 1 p.m. here on BBC One, live from Aintree. Well, there we go. That's the end of qualifying for the Malaysian Grand Prix. And once again, it's the same man who's on the button. Bye-bye.